And joining me now is presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, running as a Democrat for this campaign. Senator Sanders, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Good to be with you, Chuck.
You know, it's fascinating in our poll. I think about your candidacy from 2015, and your come from nowhere, insurgent candidacy. And here you have changed the Democratic Party. A majority of Democrats want big, substantive, transformational change. How frustrating is it to you that right now among those voters they're picking Elizabeth Warren right now and not you?
Well, that's in your poll.
I understand
There were 3 other polls that came out in the last week or two which had us in a strong second place. And let me tell you something, Chuck. Let me tell you why we are going to win the Democratic nomination and why we're going to beat Donald Trump. And that is that the working class of this country is sick and tired of working longer hours for lower wages. They're sick and tired of 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of America, sick and tired of 50% of American workers living paycheck to paycheck and being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. That is why we're going to win this election. Well,
as I was saying, I feel like message-wise, you're winning the argument. Voter-wise, you still have a ways to go. You know, why you and not Elizabeth Warren? What would you say to those Democrats that want this transformational change? Because they look at the two of you and they say, yes, there is a few differences here or there, but they're both advocating that big transformational change.
Well, Elizabeth is a good friend of mine, and all I can say is the following. What people understand is that for decades now, there have been great speeches, great legislation, great plans about how to move the working class of this country forward. And yet in the last 30 years, unbelievably, the top 1% have seen a 21% increase, a $21 trillion increase in their wealth, while the bottom half have fallen even further behind. In other words, what we need in this country is a mass movement of millions of people, which I am prepared to lead as president, to take on Wall Street, to take on the drug companies who are ripping us off every single day, to take on the insurance companies, to take on the fossil fuel industry, which is literally destroying this planet. What we need is a political revolution. And I think I am the only candidate who has been clear about that, who has the capability of doing that and defeating Donald Trump in the process.
You're getting a lot of advice these days from a lot of friends. The New York Times story earlier this week was filled with a lot of it. I want to show you an excerpt, a deeper challenge confronting his aides and supporters. After nearly 4 decades of running and usually winning iconoclastic campaigns on his own terms, he is deeply reluctant to change his approach. And you've had a lot of these are people very much supporters of you who are saying it sounds too much like 2016. You have to rejigger things a little bit. Oh, be more personable. How are you accepting this advice?
Well, look, 2 things. People say, Bernie, you're repetitious. You are talking about the rich getting richer and 40 million people living in poverty. You are talking about so many old people who cannot afford their medicine and so forth and so on. You know what, Chuck? Here's a promise I will make to you. When the poor get richer and the rich get poorer, when all of our people have health care is a right, when we are leading the world in the fight against climate change, you know what? I will change what I am saying. So it's not me that's being repetitious. It is what is going on in society continues to favor the people who have the wealth and the power, while all over this country people are working 2 or 3 jobs. And I understand that I keep hammering away at that issue, because I believe that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we don't need 45 million people struggling with student debt. Kids can't afford to go to college. Those are the issues I will continue to talk about, and those are the issues we'll win on. I'm
very curious if you have of what you make of what's happening in the House of Representatives on the Democratic side, because it does feel a bit like it's sort of insider-outsider. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was a volunteer in your campaign, she was very upset with Nancy Pelosi, and she said, when these comments first started, I kind of thought that she was keeping the progressive flank at more of an arm's distance in order to protect more moderate members, which I understood. But the persistent singling out, it got to a point where it was just outright disrespectful, the explicit singling out of newly elected women of color. Is this part of this bigger disruption that you helped lead 4 years ago, where the party is just having growing pains, or what do you make of this dispute?
Well, Chuck, this is what I think. I think it goes without saying that the future of our country and the future of the Democratic Party rests with young people. And I'm very proud, by the way, in virtually every poll that I have seen, we are winning people under 45 or 50 years of age and younger.
You do well of younger voters in our poll as well. Yeah.
Okay. And what Alexandria and other young women and women of color are saying, we have got to reach out to young people. We've got to hear the pain of the working class of this country. And that is causing some political disruption within the leadership of the Democratic Party. And let me give you one example where I am very concerned. I have helped lead the effort to expand community health centers in this country. And right now there's legislation in the House, the Democratic House, to cut in real inflation accounted for dollars community health centers by 20%. Unacceptable. So I support, Alexandria's and the other women's desire to bring more people, especially young people, working class people, into the Democratic Party. That is the future of the Democratic Party.
Do you think the speaker is being too tough on them?
I think a little bit. I think you cannot ignore the young people of this country who are passionate about economic and racial and social and environmental justice. You got to bring them in, not alienate them.
I'm curious. You're one of 7 senators running. We've got this crisis at the border, unsustainable conditions that now even Republicans are saying that they think these conditions need to change. What could you guys do right now in the Senate? What do you think you could do now in the Senate? I know you have plans to do something if you're elected president. But you guys, what do you plan on doing in the Senate in the next couple of weeks?
Well, the immediate crisis is that we cannot be separating children from their parents. You cannot be having unsanitary, disgraceful conditions in which women and children and people are living. This is the wealthiest country on earth. We can make sure that if people travel 1,000 miles with their children, while they're awaiting the asylum proceedings, they are treated with respect and dignity and as human beings.
Is there something more, though, that you could do, band together almost as a presidential caucus and try to demand some of these changes? So, I mean, it seems as if
absolutely,
it's a lot of rhetoric, but what could you guys bring from the campaign trail?
Well, I think we can raise consciousness about this issue and understand that desperate people who are fleeing violence in Honduras and other countries with their little children, these are not criminals. These are desperate people who deserve to have an asylum process and to be, if possible, not detained at all. Go with their relatives and their friends while they're awaiting the proceedings. But at the end of the day, Chuck, we have got to do what the American people want, and that is comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship for 11 million undocumented. We need to provide immediate legal status for the 1.8 million people in the DACA program and a humane border policy. That is really what we have to do as a nation.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to leave it there for now. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views, and stay safe on the trail.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.